He is immortal. Born in the Highlands of Scotland 400 years ago, he is not alone. There are others like him, some good, some evil. For centuries, he has battled the forces of darkness, with holy ground his only refuge. He cannot die unless you take his head, and with it his power. In the end, there can be only one. He is Duncan MacLeod, the Highlander.
Welcome to Highlander Rewatch, the podcast where each and every week we look at another part of the Highlander universe. I'm one of your rewatchers, Keith.
We're back, baby! This is Kyle, excited to be back doing the series after a long stint with the movies.
This is Eamon. We're back with season 2, baby.
Welcome, Kyle and Eamon. I'm super pumped about season 2. So, just a little reintroduction to your rewatchers. We've been doing this podcast for, 6 months now?
That's about right.
Yeah, it's been a while. So
it's been a while.
So if you haven't heard our other podcasts, feel free to go back. They are all available for free on SoundCloud. You can just subscribe on iTunes, wherever you get podcasts. We've got every single episode of the first season up. And we also did a 7-episode retrospective on the Highlander motion picture. Plus, there's some cool interviews with David Abramowitz, one of the executive producers.
We wanted to kick off the show with an ultimate piece of reader mail. That's right, this reader mail actually comes from David Abramowitz as a follow-up to our interview with him that we conducted last season.
Yeah, so if you haven't listened to the interview, make sure to go back and check it out. But David wrote us an email the other day, and he said, I didn't mention what a brilliant piece of casting Adrian was. He was perfect for the part. Please let your fans know that if you can. And this, I guess, was in reference to what made the Highlander show so special. And of course, yes, we agree. Adrian is a great and crucial part of the Highlander series mythology.
Yeah, that's inseparable from what makes it so good.
Yeah, so thank you again, David, for sending that in. And it was, of course, a pleasure to talk to you, and we can't wait to talk to you again soon. I guess the best way to do this is just jump right into season 2, right?
That's right.
Absolutely. Which, if you remember Highlander, you know that this is when the show starts to really get good.
Yeah.
And I think we kick it off with a pretty good example of that.
Yeah, so actually, the last episode was left off on a cliffhanger. So we should just maybe give a little recap of what happened last time. So Duncan was in Paris. He met up with his friend Fitz, and Darius, their good friend, was murdered in a church, which is not allowed by immortals. He was killed by a group called the Hunters, and they were hunting down immortals, and they kidnapped Fitz. And anyway, so Darius died, and I guess we are now wondering what's going to happen next, and who was this group of people? We know they're part of some organization.
That's right.
That's the very brief synopsis of the season 1 cliffhanger.
Yeah, if you need a punishingly exhaustive look at what happened in season 1, just go back and listen to our earlier episodes. We'd love it if you did.
Right.
That's right.
So, this is episode 1 of season 2, The Watchers, episode 93-201-23, if you want to get real nerdy and technical, which we won't. That might be the last time I give that number.
I'm stocking that away for a rainy day.
Yes, you are.
Is that the same as the zip code that they look for in this
We're going to talk about the zip code. So this episode first aired on September 27th, 1993. And I just want to note, that's a Monday. So the date has changed that these episodes are airing. This used to be a Saturday afternoon show.
Interesting.
And now it's a Monday. So
you're telling me Garfield didn't watch this episode?
I guess not. He hated anything to do with Mondays.
Bummer.
Even Highlander. Maybe they got hip to the fact that a show about decapitations with a bunch of side boob in it probably shouldn't be on Saturday afternoons, but I don't really know.
Yeah, right after cartoons. Just follow that up.
Right after Garfield, actually.
So this episode was directed by Clay Clay
Boris?
Boris. Yes, I
Yeah.
just said Morris. Boris. He's a Canadian director, and this was his first of 8 episodes of Highlander that he directed. He also did some of the Forever Night Show, which we brought up, and a lot of
Yeah.
Facebook people have mentioned that to us.
Yeah.
That it's another Vancouver-based show that has very similar tones to Highlander.
I also have that he did an episode of Rin Tin Tin K9 Cop, which
Yes.
we've talked about.
Yes,
Nice.
he did.
Yeah.
No secret how that dog fights crime.
And the Hardy Boys.
Ooh.
Get Hardy Boys.
Already there.
The
Sorry.
writer, the
gross.
writer of this episode was Marie Chantal Droney. We know her, of course.
Yeah.
She is the presumed wife of Kevin Droney.
That's right.
One of the producers. And this is the last episode she wrote of Highlander. She only did a total
Bummer.
of 4. She did Mountain Men, Band of Brothers,
Yes.
Beast Below, and The Watchers. And
So she has a good track record.
3 out of 4 ain't
mostly.
bad.
Yeah.
I have to assume she didn't write that song.
I really
The
hope
Beast
not.
Below.
Oh my god.
I don't know.
Guys, can you tell me how many days are in a year?
Nope. I wish there was a song that would tell me though.
But how many years in a century?
I don't know. I wish there was a song. I only learn things by song.
Yeah, just musically.
Yeah.
I have a musical mind. So, this episode, we've got some guest stars. The first would be, we'll call him a guest star, but it's really a new addition to the show. Jim Burns is on.
Becomes a real steady, rock solid component of this show moving forward.
Right. He plays Joe Dawson.
Joe Dawson.
Dogs.
Yeah.
So he's a blues guitarist, and he's worked in the industry for a long time, a huge voice acting
Yeah.
career. I remember years ago when I found out he did the voice work on Transformers Beast Wars.
Yeah.
Nice.
Which was awesome. He was Inferno, the ant. So go on YouTube, look up a clip of Inferno from Beast Wars, and just imagine Joe Dawson, because this voice is crazy. It's clearly Jim Burns, like, screaming all the time. It's awesome.
He did Nick Fury on X-Men Evolution. I'm an anime fan. He was in Gundam Wing Endless Waltz, the OVA Gundam Wing movie.
Wow.
If anybody watched Toonami. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Awesome. He was also in Sonic the Hedgehog, the cartoon, which I remember watching a
Which
lot.
one?
Yeah, the good
Been
one.
like-
The good one. No, the one that was like dark and
The one that was
gritty.
weird.
Yeah.
Blue streak.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Seeds by that one.
the Hedgehog.
And like
That
Sonic's
one?
dad,
Nice.
was it Sonic's
Yeah.
dad was kidnapped, or he
is
got
like his
turned into
uncle?
a robot?
It was like
Got
his grandpa or
roboticized.
something. Yeah.
Man, that's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, the hits keep on trying with Sonic the Hedgehog.
He was also Dr. Light on the Mega Man cartoon.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So we're 3 fucking nerds.
This episode also guest stars Peter Hudson as James Horton. So he's back. We obviously know who he is from the previous episode, The Hunters.
Though he was never named in that episode.
Oh,
they,
right.
they
never.
list his
Yeah.
name in the credits, but they never say the name Horton.
Nope.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's the mysterious man. This episode also guest stars Kelly Oburn as Lynn Horton. She's Horton's daughter, and the only reason I
Yeah.
bring her up is because she also was in the movie Night Moves with Christopher Lambert
Right, yeah.
and Diane Lane.
Yeah.
So check out that kind of noir mystery movie.
Isn't that nuts?
Yeah, it is weird.
Yeah.
It's a movie about like a chess master who gets framed for murder. Night Moves, get it?
This is
Oh boy.
also a trend. She was on an episode of Silk Stockings, which comes up a lot.
A lot.
And I'm obsessed with it for some reason. She's also in an erotic thriller called Watch Me.
Ooh, sounds enticing.
Sounds erotic.
I'm thrilled.
Yeah.
So, shall we read the IMDb episode description, which is always a treat?
Yeah.
Do it.
All right. So, still grieving over Darius's death, Duncan tries to elicit the meaning of the numbers Darius left him. He meets Joe and learns about the Watchers, who records the facts about immortals, but never interferes. Joe insists the Watchers would never have killed Darius. Duncan recognizes Horton as his attempted killer, and their conflict pulls Joe between them. I guess we're done with the episode after that description, because
Jeez
that did
Louise.
it all.
Oh boy.
What? Where do these descriptions come from?
Sometimes they're written by users, so I know they're not official, but I love reading them anyway
Yeah.
because
That
they're...
somehow makes them better.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it totally makes
Yeah.
them better.
Also,
That
we-
was like a summary.
Yeah. So, just to dive in, we should talk about the new opening sequence.
Yeah.
Yeah,
which,
totally.
Which you heard at the open of our episode as well.
Yeah. This is great. And this is the one I remember from a kid now that I think about it.
It's awesome.
Yeah, it's really good. Like, he's in a weird, smoky alley. It's like blue. It kind of reminds me of shots from the movie, like the Kurgan McLeod fight in the movie in the alley, but it's really nicely shot, and we have Joe Dawson narrating.
It's worth noting, I was pretty critical of the opening crawl at the beginning. Crawl is a bit strong. Whatever you want to call the opening at the beginning of the first season, because it's so cryptic.
Yeah.
This, I feel like, strikes a good balance where, like, you have enough information to kind of bite in, but it's not too exhaustive. But still, he talks for about 40 seconds.
This, I even know the new opening
voiceover.
sequence is 1minute and 20 seconds long. Like, this is a long opening credits sequence to a show.
Yeah.
But this has like mood, and it's good. And
Yeah.
Jim Burns does a good job reading this voiceover, unlike, sorry, Adrian,
I was born 400 years
Yeah.
ago.
like where he's just trying to mumblecore that Highlander origin out as fast as he can. Like
Yeah.
Jim Burns is like, "He gonna die." It's like,
Yeah, it's really good.
Yeah.
And
Some
and
good-
it's good they got rid of all those the terminology, like quickening is not mentioned. Like
Yeah.
it's a little bit more generic. Like if I stumbled across this show and saw the opening, I definitely would stick around to be like, oh, what's this
It'd
about?
be
Like
interesting.
because it's like.
Yeah.
Again, it's shot really well. Like they shot some footage for the opening, Duncan walking down the alley, but like
Yeah.
it's like, oh, he's been alive for centuries, battling the forces of darkness. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, that's interesting. Like, all right, like it's real, like plain, simple English.
And it's like, with holy ground, his only refuge. So, like, they put it in the opening, which I don't know if, did they say that before?
No.
Because I remember in season 1, something that bugged me a lot was they'd always say, good thing we're meeting on holy ground so we can have a discussion.
Right.
Whereas,
yeah, they'd always tell you what
They'd
they're
have
doing.
to set it up because,
Yeah.
like, you can't assume that people know,
Right.
especially in the pre-Hulu TiVo
Right.
days.
Right.
so it's interesting that they just stick it in the beginning. Maybe that'll be interesting to look for if they stop saying that.
They stop
so much.
sprinkling it into the episodes
Right.
themselves. That's a
Yeah.
good point.
Yeah, I know the opening credits do change maybe one or two more times, but like
Because the one that always sticks out to me is the one where Joe says, like, for 400 years he's been a lover, a writer,
and that's even a longer
Wow.
one.
a wanderer, and like
That's
they
a great
really play it out. But this is good because it also sets up Duncan's character. It's like he was born a long time ago, and he's like a superhero, and he fights bad guy, like bad immortals like him. They're evil immortals. He fights them. It's all kind of just. It's like a little bit. It's almost like workman-like in the way it's like checking the boxes you need to know to see this show, and it establishes the mood well.
Yeah.
Thumbs up, big improvement.
Yeah,
He's
definitely.
good.
And it has an awesome shot of Duncan doing like kung fu that
Yeah.
cuts to an explosion. Like
It literally looks like he kicks a window into an explosion. It's amazing.
it's fantastic editing. And the Queen music again fits even better with this opening than it did the last
Yeah.
season. Like
Despite there being less of it, like it's more compressed in
Yeah.
this, and like somehow it has a bigger punch.
definitely.
Well, I like the spooky, like, there's spooky, like, ambient music in the back of this, which
Yeah.
I think is really cool.
yeah, there's like some chimes when like it opens up. It's like
I like
it's
the
eerie.
chimes.
It's cool.
Reminds me of a porch.
Actually, and also a testament I'll say to this opening is in the first season, like I watched it. I remember I watched The Gathering. I watched the opening credits, and then I just would skip ahead every
Yeah.
subsequent episode until it changed. I watched those.
Yeah.
But I was always skipping the opening. This season, every episode I've watched, I'm like, now watch the opening credits again, like because I'm just
Yeah.
like it takes me on a cool ride. And just to make a comment about like TV shows in general, like I think everyone's like a little desperate to get content in. Like stories are really dense now on TV, and there's a
Yeah.
lot of like material they need to get into, like 42, 43 minutes. And so you find a lot of like there's not a lot of opening credits anymore in movies at all. Like
It's just like a title card.
it's just like a
Yeah.
title card
and
and
like a sound. It'll
yeah,
go
like
schlong,
yeah, like
and
Lost
like
is a
thing of-
classic example. It just says Lost and goes brrr. Like it's like, oh, okay, like, and it does set up, I guess it has its own kind of character, but like
Sure.
I really kind of like the ride a good opening credits takes you on. Like it's a great opening, like it's a great
Yeah.
way to start a show, and also a testament like to the power of like music, that it can really like put you in a mood to like be like, oh, I'm gearing up to watch this story, like, and the music is part of what gets you in that kind of mindset, I think so.
I think
Yeah,
that's anime really taps into that. Like, the theme song is like part of the thing that makes it what it is. And I kind of miss that too.
All I can think of is striking counterexamples to that. But I'm sure what you're saying is true, but I'm just not thinking of them.
Well, like the Cowboy Bebop opening, for
Okay, that's a great example.
that's a good one.
Like,
I was
that's-
thinking of Head Chala.
I actually love that. I have
so
that
silly.
song. It's ridiculous.
For those at home, that's the Dragon Ball Z theme.
That's right. Very
Anyway,
good.
Anyway, so The show opens up, and we open up in Paris. And we know this because there is about a minute-long opening establishing shot of just traffic in Paris.
Yep.
It's a little long, but we're in Paris.
Traffic rewatched.
That's right. I think this is the same corridor that dude ran down while he was escaping being stabbed. Do you remember that?
No.
I can't remember the
Maybe
name. In Band of Brothers, the French dude that's running for refuge. Like,
Yes.
I'm pretty sure this is the same alley.
I bet it is, yeah. We end up in the inside of a club. This is a crazy, like, punk rock.
Yeah.
I don't even want to say punk rock, like
There's skinheads in here,
Skinhead,
and, like,
it's
punk
crazy. And I guess
rockers.
Duncan,
Yeah.
this is a spot Duncan likes to hang out.
And he's hanging out there with Richie. And Richie's like, yeah, I can hang out here. Yeah, this isn't bad. Like,
And like, I actually love this scene.
yeah.
Like, not necessarily its content, but like its mood.
Yeah.
Like, you really get to see Duncan struggling. This is probably the darkest moment we've seen Duncan in to this point in the series.
Yeah, he's just drinking himself, like,
He's
into
like-
oblivion.
You don't really see him drink that much on the show as
Yeah.
like modern day Duncan. He looks like sweaty and kind of disheveled, and he's in this like
He has his hair down, I think, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's just like grungy spot, and like he just wants to fight some skinheads.
And he just has like this 1,000-yard stare. And he's not really acknowledging Richie's talking to him.
Right.
Richie's weirdly upbeat.
Yeah, he is.
Well,
So
Richie's trying to be a
Be a pal.
Be a pal. He's
Yeah.
trying to.
That usually happens when one friend is down, the other one gets to be chirpy.
What's
Cheer him up.
What's a friend?
What is friend?
So the camera then dissolves into, I guess, Duncan's like
glass?
gin and tonic or whatever
Yeah.
he's drinking, and we get a flashback to, a montage of
Again.
Darius again. And so this is a lot. So
Yeah.
I have in my notes that this episode in some ways like almost feels like a
A clip show?
clip show or like Pilot 2.0 or something.
You know what I was going to say? I felt this way about some of the other early episodes that we'll be talking about soon. I feel like they're a little bit padded.
Yeah. This.
You know what I mean? Like they
Yeah.
they decided to blow their budget on making certain scenes look really good, and I think they succeed in that, including in this episode. There's some really good looking things, but then they need to like stretch it because this is a very long flashback. I actually like the dissolve though.
Oh yeah, it's a cool
Like,
design.
it goes
good.
from like the rotating ice into this thing,
Yeah.
and it
Yeah.
like it works pretty well.
So I was trying to think though, like I mean, again, like we have DVR and Hulu and all this
Well,
stuff
this
today.
is before home video was like big.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know, big, but
I remember recording a lot of these shows on tape when I was younger.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, if you didn't tape this show, like, there's probably a good like maybe 8 months you had not seen the last episode,
yeah.
unless you had maybe caught a rerun. So a lot of shows at this time would always kind of recap stuff because you could not watch it in the condensed time that we watch stuff today, like on Netflix. We just binge watch everything.
Right.
So I think they're trying their best to kind of recap some stuff, but it does feel
Yeah.
a little padded. They could have done it probably quicker than this.
Well, they're also
Yeah, and it like also like what's wrong with like a previously on or
Yeah.
something like that?
Right.
You know,
but that
I
still
don't
takes
know.
up your
That still takes up your
airtime.
time, yeah.
But there are 3 in this one flashback. There are like 3 or 4 flashbacks. We get like their first meeting, one of their chess games, and Duncan
what did
like
I
And the
could
scream?
yeah,
You get the
and
scream again?
The scream in this episode happens twice,
Yes, it does.
which is insane.
Yeah, you'd think they would have saved that.
Yeah. It's wacky Shack.
We end up flashing back to the present.
Not before we get a sweet bass slide. The music cue on this just.
So the
Oh wait.
Okay.
We need to talk about this transition.
Yeah,
which
we
I just
do.
remembered. Okay, so the flashback ends. Darius has been murdered, and Duncan screams, "Darius!" And then it comes to the present, and there's just a bald man screaming in Duncan's face. And I'm just like, what's happening? Why is this man doing this? And I mean, I guess he's
doesn't
drunk
need a
and he's in a punk club, but
Right.
I'm like,
He's a drunk skinhead.
yeah, insane. And Duncan isn't even acknowledging
no,
it.
he's
but
not phased at all.
I was like, this is insane. This needs to be on an endless loop.
But then Duncan decides he's feeling feisty and says,
Yeah.
"Quote, hey, I'm talking to you, Conehead.
Yeah.
Meldar."
So Duncan ends up picking a fight with this skinhead dude.
Well, the skinheads are picking on someone.
They're picking on this dude, and I checked in the script. It says they're picking on an Arab busboy, and there's a broken glass on the ground. And in the script, they're trying to make him pick it up with his tongue.
Ugh.
So these guys are piece of
They're
shit.
bad guys.
So like they're literally supposed to be like ultra like neo-Nazis.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
these guys are bad
and
news.
this, they're kind of just picking on him.
Yeah.
Like, they're not really.
they're
picking on
teasing them and being jerks, but
Yeah, I actually wasn't convinced for a second that they weren't actually part of the same party and they're
Are they
just
just
razzing
horsing
this guy
around? Yeah.
Like it's like definitely on the line of like it obviously looks like there's trouble and we're
Yeah.
supposed to, based on his reaction, we're supposed to believe it, but just pausing, it's like in a vacuum, they might just be teasing this guy.
Yeah.
Right?
So we find out from Richie that this is 1 week later after Darius has
Yeah.
died. So not too much time has passed, and Duncan then decides he's going to flip out and
Yeah.
defend this young busboy.
Yeah.
So he goes over and loses his shit completely.
And he's like, yeah, fight me.
This is a really dark turn for this character
Yeah,
too.
yeah.
It's great though.
It is
honestly like I kind of wish this was a little sustained. Like this episode, like this moment of darkness. Like once he kind of gets down to business of trying to solve, like when Mac takes the case, he seems like a lot more like the normal version of the character. I wouldn't mind just like exploring this dark Mac timeline, for a little while. Especially since when we spoke to David Abramowitz during that interview, he kind of mentioned that one of his plans for the character, had Darius not died, would be to like let Mac explore some of this darkness a little bit, and if Darius be the voice kind of bringing him back.
Definitely.
So this was kind of tantalizing in that sense. It's like, oh, like Dark Mac could be compelling.
Dark Mac.
Dark Mac.
That's actually my favorite McDonald's order.
The Dark Mac. I'll have a Dark Mac.
I'll have a Dark Mac, please.
So then we leave this scene after Duncan has thoroughly beat the shit out of everybody
Yeah.
in the bar.
Yeah.
I left at the line, I'm going to kill you. And Max just goes, I don't think so.
Yes, definitely. So Duncan and Tess are, I guess, back home. I'm not exactly sure. I guess I thought they were maybe the museum or something. I wasn't sure where they are because it's not the barge.
Yeah.
And so my only thing left was like, I guess they're.
But they have all their boxes, but they're not in.
Yeah.
So they're moving.
They're moving right.
from Paris.
So they're
I guess that's all we need to know.
yeah. Yeah.
And so Duncan mentions that he has this theory that there was a number written on the back of this Watcher Chronicle that he
Right.
has from the previous episode, The Hunters.
Yeah.
And he thinks it's a zip code
from Seacouver.
from Seacouver. And so he wants to go investigate this. And we'll
Right.
talk about this in a minute about
Yeah.
how the zip code breaks down. But
Yep.
Tess decides that she's going to go with him.
Right.
And so at this point, I was kind of like a little excited about Tessa's character. I was like, good, like she doesn't want to be left alone. Like she's taking taking a stand. She's like, no, I'm going to be part of this adventure with you. And I was
Right.
like, great. This character is getting stronger. Very good. So anyway, then we cut to Seacouver. They arrive, and we get this montage of Duncan driving around. This reminded me of some early scenes in what was it? What was the episode? Family Tree.
Where Richie's
road
going around
not-
trying to find Mr. Stubbs.
Oh,
or
that
Tubbs.
that
Yeah.
episode, and also
And The Road Not Taken.
The Road Not Taken,
Yeah.
where Duncan is just randomly driving around,
Yeah.
looking for what he's looking for, like
Well,
with no plan.
Yeah. This scene he has a list of I don't know what.
Well, maybe he made a list of possible things
So-
that zip code can mean.
Okay,
Right.
so-
It's like, or zip in quotes zip code.
So yeah, all right. First off, let's talk about zip code. So we've determined that Seacouver is in America. I think in season 1 they've mentioned like
Yeah.
going stateside. I guess so.
But they never explicit. Well, no, Richie.
Do they say it's the? Do they ever say it's actually the United States?
I don't
Are they
think so.
using
But Richie
stateside
has-
as slang for North America?
But Richie has all his American.
He's got a lot
He's
of
got
American.
all that American.
Yeah.
He's Bandit Keith.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly.
Not you, Keith.
Matt.
Well, you're also a bandit.
Thank you. So first off, in America, we don't have zip codes like this. It's not the right amount of numbers, right? Also, we don't have letters in our zip code. Like, this is not a zip code. Am I mistaken?
So do we? What is the actual text of
The actual text of the zip that he has is 2027 NJS.
Nope.
Yep. Nope. That does not. That is not even close.
That's not even close to a zip code. So then
If we have any postal workers listening, if we're wrong, let
if you're a
us know.
Canadian postal worker, please
Yeah.
let us know.
So he then has this list of possible places to check out in Seacouver.
Yeah.
And so let's break down what this quote unquote zip code actually is. So 20
Also, just to pause on the concept of zip code, it's like, oh, it could be in a multi-mile radius.
Yeah.
Like, I guess in a city, zip codes tend to be pretty small because, like, you need multiple post offices.
well, in Philadelphia, it's like every 4 blocks I walk, it's a new zip code. Like,
Yeah.
Right. But if you're, like, in North Dakota, like,
I imagine they could be pretty big. Yes,
yeah.
absolutely.
So it's like, but this is not a very specific hint.
no,
Yeah.
not at all. Yeah, big or large or big or small. This is completely unspecific.
Yeah, it's like, oh, it might be like 8 square blocks in my metropolitan area.
Right. So,
And also, whatever happened to Master Macker's Master Hacker techniques?
Oh,
he can't
yeah, he
just
should've
type
been-
this in and I don't know.
yeah.
And then masturbate.
That's right.
So he's got this list that
I like that. I like that.
that has things written on it like 27 something. It'll be like 27 North Jackson or 27 New Johns, and it's like
New Johns.
yeah. So it's like, oh, okay. So the premise of this zip code is 27 is an address. Again, this is not how zip codes work. NJ is the street, not New Jersey, which is the actual state abbreviation for New Jersey.
Right, that there is a New Jersey street in Seacouver, apparently.
I guess. So NJ is North Jackson or North Johns, and then
Or New
S,
Jersey,
and then S must stand for Seacouver. Like, what's
I
the
don't-
like?
yeah.
This is
South? I
yeah,
don't know.
I don't understand at all what this means. This is the craziest thing in this episode. Probably this is maybe the craziest thing that we've seen. Period in this show.
That's a bit strong. It's just such a bad breadcrumb.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, they had to have been able to do better.
Anything
Like,
else?
they should-
Joe Dawson written in the book? I mean, anything.
They could have just put an address, or put that bookstore, or who knows?
Yeah.
Like,
the bookstore.
Maybe
That
like
would've
a
been
card
good.
from the bookstore, or
Yeah.
like a...
it could have been
just
anything. This
anything.
Well, also, there's
mystery.
this really long sequence of Duncan driving around,
It's
holding
so
this
long.
list. Then he gets out of the car, looks around, gets back in the car,
and goes like, not that.
Not
and that
that.
happens like 3 or 4 times.
Yeah, this is so long to be so uninteresting. Like if this was actually a mystery, I would be interested in the whole episode being
Yeah.
the search for Joe, essentially.
Yeah.
Like how do we unravel this series of clues? That would be fine if it again was compelling in any way at all. But yeah, this is just him.
This is again like
Meandering
padding,
around. Yep.
padding.
When he finally does get to this bookstore that we come to learn is run by Joe Dawson, there's this great shot of Joe is up on this kind of like balcony foyer kind of area, and it's looking down as Mac enters the shop. And it's really cool. I was into that shot.
Totally.
And he comes across some clerk who, as soon as he sees McLeod, is like a deer in headlights.
He's
Right.
like, blah, blah, blah. He's
Yeah.
like, handsome man. At first, I was like, it took me a second to be like, oh, no, this guy's like a watcher.
Right.
I was like, why is he so starstruck? Like,
So
Who's this well-dressed man
Right.
coming in?
oh my.
so Joe ends up coming down and assists Duncan, and so Duncan presents him with this Watcher Chronicle, and he's
Right.
like, "Oh, like what's the deal with this book?" And Joe's like, "Oh, like this looks like shit, so it's probably not
Yeah.
worth much, but I want to buy it."
But
And
he
he's-
says it has beautiful illustrations.
Right, so he
I
says-
want to talk about this for a second.
"Go ahead."
So this like they show the illustrations in this book. I just did hand quotes.
Do they?
Yeah.
Yeah, a little
they,
bit.
Like they show the pages, and they're like illuminated manuscript type pages. So Duncan treats this chronicle like shit in this episode. Like, how old is this book supposed to be? 500 years old.
Well, I think it's way more than 500 years old. Like, it's from the 500s, and that's
Gotcha.
why it's like an old Germanic
Right.
Okay,
thing.
so it's very old.
So this
Yeah,
is a
it's, like,
very old,
super old.
Like this is a very old, very valuable book that Duncan is carrying around in his hands. He's running through the streets with it. Later, he stops a dart with it. Like he's treating this ancient like manuscript that has all this information about his people like garbage. He like has it bent, and they're all handling it with their greasy hands.
Yep.
And I'm just like,
Yeah, like this book would be in like a sealed, light controlled, airtight.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, where you have
like-
to wear those gloves to
Yeah.
just handle the book.
Yeah,
Right.
like it would not be surprising to me that a book this old, like a manuscript of that age and quality, would be worth in like the 6+ figures.
Even in its crummy condition, which
Or- yeah.
honestly doesn't look like it's in the worst condition. in the
Also,
world.
this book, nobody on the planet except for the Watchers knows this book exists. This is like one of the most rare artifacts
ever.
ever. Right. And Duncan just has it out. He is resting his coffee on it in the morning. So that just drove me crazy. But yeah, okay.
So Joe's interested in buying it, but Duncan is not. And there's a funny little bit of dialogue in the script, I thought here. Like, Joe also is, in the script at least, which they didn't film, is a little starstruck by Duncan. And Duncan's like, hey, like, what's going on? Oh, also, it should be noted that in the script, his name is Ian. It's not Joe. They changed it. But he's a little struck. And there's
he's more
fu-
of a Joe.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah.
Joe's more he's an everyman sort of guy, which is good for the character.
Yeah.
But Joe has a funny comment, like Duncan makes some remark about it. He's like, "What are you staring at?" And he's like, "Oh, sorry, it's a habit." I thought that was very funny because he's a watcher and he's used to observing.
That's good.
So I thought that was pretty good. But I've got some questions about this scene. Like Joe and his little assistant there,
Robert,
right, seem surprised to see Mac walk into their store. So how does watching work? Like
nobody's watching
so
him.
Joe is supposed to be Duncan's watcher.
Yeah.
And so in one scenario, I can see Joe's supposed to follow Mac around, which seems difficult. Like uprooting your life all the time to follow an immortal. So I could more practically see that watchers have territories, and he's one of the Seacouver operatives or whatever. How do they not know Mac is on his way? This seems crazy to me. Nobody, because at a later point in the show, Joe knows that Darius died. So a watcher recorded that, but didn't mention that Duncan was I don't know. I find it a little weird that no one knows what's kind of going on. The watchers seem kind of inept about all this.
Well, it's also got to be the lines of this organization are never quite fully spelled out because they're not a massive they're not the Illuminati or something. You know what I mean?
Ooh, maybe they are.
They're not real. But there's no reason to assume that this is the most well-funded, super secret organization, though they flirt with that from time to time.
Yes,
it's got to be very difficult for private citizens to follow this person around all the time.
Oh, I agree.
Maybe they would have figured out that Duncan left. You know what I mean? Maybe they don't know he leaves immediately. Maybe they don't know Darius dies the minute he dies, but eventually they get to it and put the pieces together.
I can see that.
Yeah, the other thing about this is Horton is actively fucking with McLeod right now, so he might be suppressing this information.
That's a good... I like that interpretation.
Yeah.
Look at that shit.
Very good. So... Duncan ends up leaving the store, and he goes to put his glasses on.
There's a weird glasses eye shot.
This is... Oh, God. Yeah.
You're literally seeing the world through rose-colored spectacles.
Yeah, it's weird.
Yep.
So he puts on these glasses. He looks across the street. Oh, there's a building across the street called Kenneth Gord Publications. Did anyone see that?
Yep.
Which I thought was interesting because one of the producers is Ken Gord, so they named a little set piece after him. But by putting on these ruby glasses, like Cyclops, he can now see... Lasers? What?
Is that what it was?
I think so.
No, I thought he just saw the sight on the book.
He sees that a second time. The first time he puts it on, he sees the full laser. In movies when they blow smoke and you can see the length of a laser, that's what it looks like after he puts on these glasses. So
It's absurd.
It's ridiculous.
And also, it's laser surveillance equipment.
What is laser surveillance equipment? I don't even know what that means.
I don't know.
It was just one of those things that someone thought sounded cool, so it's in this episode.
Absolutely. So,
why couldn't he just have noticed?
Exactly.
Like the book. He sees the sight on the book or whatever.
Well, then also he looks up to the window and sees somebody there looking at him. So, that's all you needed. He could have just gone outside and seen someone peering at him. And it's okay, someone's watching.
Because he's there suspecting people of watching him. So then he's suspicious, looks around and sees someone with a camera.
Yeah.
That would have been fine.
So Duncan goes to investigate, and then we get treated to this little bit of dialogue as the two goons that were watching him emerge, I suppose.
Not to mention an amazing MIDI soundtrack.
Yeah. So these guys know they've been made by Mac.
Made by Mac.
Mac out.
Yeah, that's right.
Made by Mac. I've got that in my shirt. Made by Mac.
We're gonna have a Mac out session.
Mac.
That's good. Here it is. The MIDI.
I'll take two.
What?
Aren't you selling something in the case?
No.
Oh, funny, I could have sworn that you were. My loss, huh?
Yeah, no problem.
No, but you see, there is. See, I promised the little lady some laser surveillance gear. So that she could keep an eye on the kids.
Straight to punching.
So this guy
Also,
tries
you
to
can't have kids, Mac.
karate him. So there's a karate chase.
You never try to karate Mac.
Yeah, you do not.
So then there's a huge karate chase in which Mac gets clotheslined.
Yes, he
which
runs
is
around
amazing.
the corner. I laughed out loud. At that part.
This is so good, especially because there's essentially a POV shot from Mac's point of view of him just getting decked.
Yep. He
And again,
gets
this is-
punched directly in the face and does a flip.
It's awesome.
Yeah. Also, I just want to say more on this book. He's running after these guys with this book like clenched as tightly as he can have it in his hand, and then like when he gets punched, like the book goes flying. Like.
Oh, also, as part of this amazing chase scene, when we see the two goons like fleeing the scene, they run by the camera, and there's some like ADR effects of like them running, and they're panting like crazy. It's like it's like cartoon sound effects as they run by. And I will bring this up later because this is not the first time this happens in the show. So Duncan has this giant karate fight because, as we know in the show, everybody is like a karate master.
Mm-hmm. They way more stylized. I don't know if that's a sentence. The stylization of Mac's fighting style. God damn it. We'll try that a third time. Mike's fighting style is way more stylized.
Mike's fighting style, you said?
Why can't I say the sentence? The way Mac fights is way more stylized in this season.
Oh, totally.
And they way play up this kind of martial arts element to this character, and I like it. Sometimes it's a little cheesy in terms of like the unnecessary flourishes that are built into some of his moves, but it's at least interesting. They've at least leaned into this martial arts element to the character as opposed to just making it this weird subtle thing.
Duncan beats these goons, and Joe approaches. And so then Joe explains what's going on. And this, I have in my notes that this is like some of the worst dialogue. Like, I don't know if we should play any of this.
It's weird.
Here, let's listen to this.
This seems like it's an outlier for his performance.
Yeah,
frankly.
Don't look so surprised. I probably know more about you than you know about yourself.
Do you?
I can tell you the time and place you became immortal. The name of your first love. But that's not important. What is important is that you care about mortals, and you don't kill for pleasure.
How about for revenge?
For that, I'd have to be your enemy, and I'm not.
Is that what you said to Darius?
Darius. A great general who became a monk? I hope the immortal who killed him rots in hell.
He was killed by a mortal.
How do you know?
Because he was beheaded on holy ground. No immortal would ever dare break that rule. If you knew so damn much about us, you'd know that.
Okay, this dialogue... One, I agree with your assessment, Eamon, that Horton is fudging the facts. Because I was wondering, like, how does he not know he was killed on holy ground?
Yeah.
Probably because Horton is messing with the Chronicles.
Right.
Which is good. This dialogue is ridiculous.
Yeah.
I think this sounds like Joe Dawson is doing like dialogue for like Knights of the Old Republic, like some sort of like role-playing game. This feels like video game dialogue to me.
Yeah.
Like it's just like thrown, like punched in. It feels like really choppy. It's not good.
Knights of the Old Republic is a great game.
I didn't mean to disparage that. That was the only RPG I could like pull right off.
You could summon.
That I could summon. But yeah, this just feels like really clunky expositional.
It doesn't match with the rest of his performance.
No.
And side note, why is he telling him this? Why does he just come out and why did he had to like hobble all the way to this thing just to for no reason just tell him everything? Also, Mac, like, do you think he's gonna torture these guys? Like,
well, do you think he's gonna try to get answers out of these people?
I mean, is he gonna like literally is he going to beat them until they talk? No. The answer is obviously no, he's not gonna do that. So why does he just randomly spill the beans?
I was questioning in the scene, are these people that Duncan beat up watchers or hunters? I think we find out later they're hunters.
Yeah.
Or it's implied.
Do we? Because, like, why does Joe intervene on their... Well, I guess he doesn't know the difference at this point. Joe doesn't.
Yeah.
Well, as far as Joe's concerned, there are no hunters, but all hunters are also watchers.
This is also true. Also, how did Joe know to follow Duncan out of the shop? Like,
who
Well,
knows?
this happened right across the street, right? The confrontation
I guess so.
with these
So I guess
guys.
he saw him.
He probably was, like, peering over a book at this thing and was like, oh.
But Joe's not supposed to know that these people are watching him.
Yeah, he doesn't know there's...
revealed later.
Yeah.
This doesn't make sense.
Really? I mean, why couldn't... I assumed they would work in, like, teams or something.
Well, later Duncan says...
Because, like, you can't follow someone effectively by yourself.
Right. But later...
Without being made, I
That's
assume.
true. Later, Duncan says to Joe, they weren't watching me, they were watching you.
Interesting.
But, I don't know.
Who knows?
Yeah.
Whatever.
Rewatched!
Hey, are you a Highlander fan in 1994?
then you might be interested in the Highlander screensaver. Your computer patiently awaits your commands, an eternity of patience. It deserves some excitement. Now, with your command, it becomes a warrior at the ready. Give it some muscle, give it the fury of the quickening, and the action of battle with the blockbuster Highlander screensaver. It morphs through hundreds of production stills from the Highlander movies and television series. For Macintosh and Windows, $35.
I can't believe a screensaver was $35.
$35.
That's a lot of dollars.
I did own that at some point, but I don't remember paying for it. I feel like they gave that to me for free for buying something else.
Wow.
I don't know if anyone was willing to pay $35.
Did it come for free with your Watcher Chronicle?
Yeah, I think that came for free. Oh, no, I might have bought that one.
No, I mean, you bought the Watcher Chronicle.
I bought the Watcher Chronicles.
And then they gave you
and
that
I think
for-
they gave me the screensaver to come with it.
That's a deal.
What a deal. So we're back at the antique store, and we got Richie like acting like a little bitch again. Because he's like, I don't want to have to do all this stuff now. Like, why do we have to clean now? And it's like, Tess is like making him clean the blinds and stuff.
Oh, right. Oh, this is nuts.
So Richie goes to clean the blinds, and somebody is like, he parts the blinds,
And there's just a face.
and someone's just staring right at him. So I was trying to imagine this from the other guy's point of view,
Yeah.
and I was like, hold on, was somebody just standing like
Watching the blinds?
like, yeah, essentially staring at a wall for who knows how long
This
until
man-
Richie
yeah.
opened them up? Like, what? Like,
This man
He had
takes
like
his...
a little window. Like he
Yeah.
was seeing like a little band of what was happening.
I guess
inside.
it's crazy.
He must have been, because otherwise he was literally just be
Just
doing what you're
staring at
saying.
nothingness.
Well, he takes his watcher duties very seriously.
That's just a little interstitial scene. So we know at this point that Tess and Richie are getting the antique store back in shape. And I want to talk about that later, but we'll get to that. So then we're back in the alley, and Joe is explaining what the purpose of the Watchers is. He's talking about how they record truth.
We observe and record, but never interfere. This is the first time we get that.
What ends up
line.
becoming kind of the Watcher mantra, I suppose we'll learn.
So I want to talk about this for a second. Is Abramowitz or whoever created the Watchers a Fantastic Four fan? Because you have Uatu, the Watcher, and that's his credo. He has to watch Earth and record what happens there, but he can't interfere.
Ooh.
And that's in the Galactus trilogy. That's like the famous introduction to Galactus. Uatu, the Watcher, he interferes. He intercedes on Earth's behalf, so he breaks the Watcher rule.
Oh.
And I think it's interesting that the Watchers has the same exact credo as these Marvel Comics characters.
That is really interesting.
When was this established, if you know?
The 70s.
Okay, so it's back far enough. I knew Galactus was old, but
Yeah.
Wow. So next time we talk to Mr. David Abramowitz, we'll have to ask him about the Fantastic
Yeah.
Four.
My
Totally.
Marvel Kung Fu is dated, though, so somebody online might be able to educate me. But I know
well, if
that...
it's post '90s, you're good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or
Awesome.
excuse me, if it's
pre
pre-'90s,
yeah,
you're good.
Yeah, so that's interesting.
So we're back at the antique store, and I want to play this clip of Richie helping unload boxes because it's amazing.
Because it's the goddamn best.
Yeah.
That's good, just like that, Hey, be careful with that. These things don't bounce, you know what I'm saying? Thank you, right through there. Perfect, thank you very much.
Where do you want this one?
What is that? I hate that one. Put that back in the truck.
Richie.
Oh, I'm just kidding, Tessa.
Oh, wait a minute.
That voice
Wait a
in the
minute.
background.
I never noticed
I didn't
that
notice it either.
before.
What do you want?
Where do you want this?
Wait a minute. Where do you want this?
That's amazing.
So good.
It's really good.
This whole scene is crazy. And then this is also punctuated with Tess and Richie discovering someone is watching them. Mm-hmm. And did anyone get a weird vibe between... I am throughout the next couple episodes we end up watching, there is a weird chemistry between Tess and Richie.
Oh yeah.
I thought they were going to start kissing when she saw that somebody was watching them.
Yeah.
Because at one point, one of them grabs the other's face.
Yeah.
Happens as part of this scene, and then there's a little smooch. Just a little.
Yeah.
Yeah, he gives her
They
like a
do have a weird...
It's a weird
like,
vibe.
Yeah. Yeah.
Stan, about to get cursed.
Do you think...
Give her a
Christian it.
gave her a little curse on the cheek.
Well, this goes back to that Mountain Men where they're leaving the antique store and Richie has his shirt off.
Yeah.
Like walking out of the car. Okay. Richie and Tess had a side thing going. That's my theory.
So our theory right now is that Richie is Tessa's side piece.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's a
Well, he's a virile young lover.
we know he's a virile young lover.
Yeah.
This is some Woody Allen shit. Like,
like
here's
this.
this little urchin we took in. Let me.
Oh, Sun Yi.
Good.
Very good.
No, what's the opposite of that? Very bad. Very bad.
So we then arrive at Joe's office, which is back in the, I guess in the
Bookstore?
In
I
the
don't
bookstore,
know.
right.
Yeah.
So he's brought Duncan back with him, and he is going to kind of explain a little further stuff. So should we play this little clip and then talk about what's going on here in the office?
Yeah.
Kurgan. Now, from 1453 to 1535, he was in Moscow. Then, he went to the Scottish Highlands. Spent most of the 17th century in Italy. We had lost him until New York, about 8 years ago. Now, your kinsman, Connor MacLeod, he did us all a big favor when he got rid of him.
Juicy.
Yeah, so we just wrapped up talking about the movie, and here it is again.
Yeah, I'm almost hesitant to get too far into this, but this is the confirmation that they exist kind of in the same universe for now.
It's a weird thing because when we talked to David Abramowitz in our interview episode, he mentioned, and again, he's involved heavily at this point. He mentioned that I always saw these things as two separate entities that weren't really connected, but this is a strong connection to the two.
Yeah, but they had to. He had no choice because Connor is in the pilot.
Right.
Well, they didn't need to mention it again.
Yeah.
No, but Connor MacLeod has to exist and have some role in this entire thing. So I guess this is the most innocuous way.
Yeah.
Is that the events of the movie happen, but they weren't the end of the game.
Right.
Well, the other thing is on his little computer screen, there are some names and events. So you have Ramirez on there, you have Castigier on there, you have Facile on there.
Facile's on there.
Yeah.
Someone named Favlo Parucci.
Oh.
That the Kurgan came upon in 1663.
Is there any explanation as to... is it just a list of names with no explanation?
They say encounters, and then they say quickenings.
And then there's sightings.
Yeah.
So which is what Joe talks about. He's like, oh, he was in Moscow, then he was in that. That's under the sightings category.
Gotcha.
One thing that I thought was weird, though, this list appears to be going in order of his quickening list. So we've got someone named Ivan Trotsky in 1472, and then someone named Juan Sanchez Villarama. Oh yeah, him, of course.
Who's that?
In 1601. So it's oh well. Also, did the Kurgan not get a quickening between 1472 and 1601, or did just no one see it? Again, I don't know how many immortals exist.
Yeah.
And then also, especially back then with no advanced technology,
Yeah.
you might just lose this person for a century.
Right.
Until you see someone else and then deduce that they're the same person that you've read stories about.
Right. So then we get on to Favlo in 1663. Then we got Sundra Castigar. Sunda. No, this is Sundra.
I thought it was Sunda. Whatever.
I don't know, actually. And this also says is it Castigar or Castigear?
They say Castigear in the show.
How do we spell it? I don't know.
I thought it was GIR.
This is GAR. I thought it was IR too. This is weird.
Remember, yeah.
But then the thing that gets me is so it's Sundra Castigear in 1985 when the movie takes place. But then after that, it starts to type another name. Another name appears.
Yeah.
And it's not finished. And it's someone named Stosh.
Oh.
Which I thought...
He kills Stoch Kaminsky.
Right.
That's why he disappears.
Oh, actually, we do know who it is because in the encounters list, it says Stosh Basalik in 1525
Huh.
is an encounter. But I guess the quickening didn't happen until after casting. Whatever. I don't know.
Yeah.
There's this mysterious Stosh character. But also, it makes me wonder, Stosh is not a common name, right?
Someone must have been...
Someone knows a Stosh. Or their dog was named Stosh or something.
Their
dog.
It has to be. How can there be two Stosh references in the show?
Also, under encounters, Castigear is listed under an encounter in the 1700s. So the Kurgan had met Castigear before.
Yeah.
Neat.
Interesting stuff, guys.
No young doll Kim?
Nope, he was not mentioned. Yeah, I was also hoping we'd get maybe a little clue like who that Jersey guy was that we never know. It's like, oh, he could have been like just name dropped on here. Wouldn't that have been
Maybe
funny?
that's the guy that's listed.
Maybe Stosh.
Fauvel. Or Stosh.
Or Stosh. No, Fauvel was in the 1600s. Maybe Stosh was the Jerseyite.
The Jersey beheading. The Hoboken headsman.
All right, we have talked about the movie for 7 hours, and we don't need it to be 7 hours and 5 minutes or whatever we're talking about it now.
But it's a cool little tidbit.
Yeah, I think it's fun. So Joe ends up showing Duncan around the office, and he's got like memorabilia from
Like
different immortals.
A shot glass from Oki, who was a weird cowboy or something.
Right. But he also has an axe.
Yeah.
Which Duncan, of course, instantly recognizes, and then we get into flashback mode.
And it's like most of the fight scene.
Fight.
It's not even including the quickening, like everything.
Caleb Cole's whole fight.
And I guess it's no surprise they flash back to Caleb Cole's episode because it's another Marie Chantal Droney episode.
I think she just was like, oh, I like this character.
Right.
Flashback.
I mean, I guess I don't mind seeing more of Caleb Cole, but at the same
He
time,
only gets one good line in.
Yeah.
I'll take your woman and then your quickening.
But of course, then this made me think: how does Joe get this stupid axe?
Somebody was nearby. That's what he said.
But the police are there too. Like
They didn't find that axe.
Yeah. Give me
Oh,
that.
I guess.
I want that axe.
So they don't find the axe, and so one of Joe's compatriots gets it. Whatever.
Yeah.
Also,
Bam,
I'm
bam.
watching this flashback again because I was just like, I was trying to look at something other than what we would have been talking about the first time. Because, by the way, we've seen this entire scene before. What is Tessa doing during this entire scene? At one point, apparently, I missed this the first time. She goes and gets like what looks like a machete.
Yeah.
She has a machete.
Yeah.
What the hell is happening? What is she doing in this
Not
scene?
helping.
Yeah,
nothing.
She didn't help out.
They shot that and it just
Yeah.
doesn't pay off.
Nope. But we do get to see more glistening Duncan, so that's good.
That's good. So Joe says he's been tracking Duncan for 15 years, but Duncan is under the impression that like you killed Darius, like because
Right.
he's got the same tattoo, like you're part of this. Of course, Joe denies it and doesn't
Right.
know what he's talking about.
Essentially, Joe has this entire trophy wall related to various immortal items, and one of the things, he has a staff from an immortal who was some kind of Native American medicine man of some kind until he was killed by a cavalry officer as part of the game. And Max says, I know.
Yeah.
Like, he's familiar with this. And we've also had flashbacks in the past, actually in the very first episode.
Right.
Where Mac was staying with some Native American tribe and maybe has a connection here. So it's just this interesting little thread that's dropped that maybe will be picked up in the future. We'll comment
that'd be
on
nice.
if it does.
Absolutely. So then the doorbell rings. So Joe leaves the office and to see who's coming into the store. And at this point, if you wondered what kind of store this was, it's like Duncan brings a rare book that is probably worth a lot of money, and not just bringing it to see what it's like. He's assuming that whoever's running this store is an authority on rare books. So I assumed it's like, oh, this must be an antique book dealer, a rare book dealer. There are about like 10 Donald Duck comic books like hanging on the wall, and I was like, what kind of bookstore is this? Like,
I mean, I'm no authority on Donald Duck comics. I'm kidding, I am.
well, there's beautiful the beautiful illustrations in the Donald Duck comic.
Well,
This is a very rare Donald Duck illustration where he's wearing pants.
yeah. Well, actually, Donald Duck is the Duck comics of Carl Barks. They're kind of famous to comic nerds in America, but the Carl Barks Duck comics are supremely famous in Europe. And they're like, he's basically, Disney didn't really create Donald Duck, or if he did, he just created Donald Duck. And this guy, Carl Barks, who's a famous comics illustrator, he kind of expanded the whole universe. He created Uncle Scrooge, Huey, Dewey, and Louie. So in other countries, these Duck comics are like really famous and respected. It's kind of crazy, but
Are they worth a lot of money? I take it.
I don't know. Maybe like the original printings are. The other thing is Barks wasn't really credited in these comics. It was only until later. But yeah, they have like a day in I think Belgium or something that's like Donald Duck Day. Like
Wow.
the Duck comics in other countries are really famous. So that's just a nerdy little
Wow,
tidbit.
Donald Duck rewatched.
That's right.
My God. So Joe comes out to see a young woman and his assistant just macking it hard, and I'm
That's
just
right.
like, ugh, like it's like full on tongue, And I like, we talk about this a lot. Like, we are constantly grossed out by people kissing and like having sex. Like, what is wrong with us? 'Cause I thought this was gross. I'm like, why are we watching this?
Gross is a bit strong, but it's intense.
I don't need to see this dude put his tongue in this girl's mouth and like flick it around.
So this weird makeout session is in progress, and there's a weird. This is where I first noticed that there's like a weird dichotomy in the music in this episode. There's a lot of like really cheesy, kind of goofy MIDI music. That it honestly sounds a lot like that. Like that is not too far off the mark. Like in the clip we just played. And then there's also these guitar cues that are clearly a real person playing guitar. And just it's night and day. It just sounds so much better. But like there's this weird guitar cue when he discovers them necking.
Yeah. And it's her, or it's Joe's niece.
Right.
Making out with this Robert guy.
Right. So we end up finding out in this scene that her dad is actually the one who owns the store. It's not Joe's store. It's her dad's store.
Right.
And she's just graduated from college.
Right.
She's got a degree. In the script, we find out it's an art degree.
Ooh.
Which I thought was actually kind of interesting. I was like, oh, are they trying to set up a parallel with her and Tess? No, it's just an art degree. But we find out that she's going to throw a party, or her dad's throwing a party later for her graduation, and Joe should come because that's when you invite people the day of.
Yep, that's right.
And Mac hears this and stores it away for later.
Exactly.
Well, he is a party animal.
We learned that in that episode with Gabriel Patone, Eye of the Beholder. He's a real party animal.
Little nutcase.
Yeah.
God's
chosen nutcase.
That's from Archangel. Nope. What's it called? Avenging Angel?
Avenging Angel.
Yikes. X-Men, Archangel.
Zeiss.
So we cut from here back to the antique store,
and Richie decides it would be a great time to commit some vehicular homicide.
So Richie gets in this moving truck, which I guess the movers didn't drive there because they've left. Like, I don't know who those people were, but...
So I just assumed he stole a moving... He stole their moving van for a second.
And so he drives it into this person that's been watching them the whole time. He drives it into his car and, I guess, pins him there.
Yeah, and then Tess rolls by in her convertible, and he jumps in, and they make a getaway.
Yep, so this is the craziest thing. Richie definitely could have killed this person.
Yep.
And his, like, reasoning for it, he's like, well, if I'm right... great, and if I'm wrong, the insurance pays for it. It's like, no, either way, you're in so much trouble. Like, that's not how this works.
He's already a fugitive from France from his arson attempt.
His arson attempt.
Right.
His handgun thing that he was carrying when he was trying to...
For stealing a cop's gun?
Stealing a cop's gun, attempted murder of Gabriel Patone. Richie,
arson,
Richie is a serial convict. It's insane.
2 attempted murders.
So when Richie and Tess drive away, Richie gives this amazing speech about like what's going on and how he's trying to like piece together this puzzle, and he's like, I don't know what's going on. So let's play this clip. It's awesome.
This is just great. Just great. I mean, he's there, they're there, we're here, nobody's anywhere.
You ever think of running for Congress?
I don't get the Congress thing.
This is the second time they've made this joke.
Yeah,
He's
always
laying
like
around.
crapping on.
Oh, what are you running for Congress?
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess they don't have a soft spot for the government. But I guess that it's
Congress
like he's
traditionally has very low approval ratings.
Yeah. Well, I guess that it's the fact that he's like talking in circles, or like he's saying a lot of words that don't make any sense. I think that's the joke.
Yeah, though I suppose further evidence that they're in the United States.
Yeah.
Oh,
Right, because Canada has a parliament.
very good.
Jinx.
That's so crazy. So then we get to the bingo hall, and so Tess is trying to get a hold of Mac, but he's not there. And so then she just kind of wants to wait around for whatever's going to happen. At this point, I was getting a little disappointed in Tess, because at the beginning of the episode, I was like, oh, she's like becoming a strong character. Not quite the person we've seen in the last season, but I feel like she quickly degenerates into kind of just the damsel in distress. She's kind of a naysayer about everything. Like, she just becomes this foil to like blech things up. Like, I don't know. I wish she again took just a lot more like agency and did some stuff, but instead she's like, we'll just wait for him. He's the hero. It's like, why don't you go look for him? Why don't you figure out what's going on? Like,
Which just made them feel irrelevant.
yes.
Yeah.
Like, they kept on, like, cutting back to them for no reason.
Yeah, because we'll find out later in this episode that do Richie and Tess do anything in this episode? Nope. Not a thing.
Negative.
They could have not been in this episode, and it wouldn't have mattered, really, at all.
So we would have missed a lot of sweet dialogue.
Yeah.
Side note,
Yeah.
does Tessa have better chemistry with Richie than with Adrian Paul?
Yep.
I was just thinking, like, because even in these scenes, like, they just have pretty good chemistry.
Yeah.
Well, it's because they have, like, fun dialogue, and we still, I think, have a Duncan that is not too much fun with Tess.
Yeah.
Like,
Oh, you want some coffee? I'll have some coffee.
yeah.
Coffee.
like he's still a very serious character. Like, at least with her, like, he's more fun. He had more fun in the alley with the two goons than he typically does with Tess. Like,
Yeah.
it's really somber with her all the time. Like, what? Oh, more fun with in the alley.
Yeah, we had a gay reading of Highlander the movie.
Yep.
Duncan was cruising for some S.
Anyway,
So we get another karate fight back at the antique store.
Oh, yeah.
And Duncan throws the dude through a window. He's like, great, another window.
Yeah, but let's talk. I just want to mention the book again.
This is the book, yeah.
Somebody shoots a dart at Duncan, like a tranquilizer dart.
really?
Yeah.
Why not a gun?
And then Duncan.
Your goal is to behead this man. Why do you care about tranking him?
Yeah, and Duncan stops it with the Fifth Chronicle. Again, the ancient illuminated manuscript book that is worth probably, just for the information contained there alone, it's a priceless record. And Duncan uses it as, a protection,
Shield?
a shield. Yeah.
Shield. So
Jesus.
I wanted to bring up this antique store and packing from Paris thing again. Like, wait, I never got the impression when they left Seacouver in the middle of season 1 that they were, like, closing the antique shop. Like, they, I guess, packed up everything and carted it to Paris for who knows what reason. Like, they stored it there, maybe?
I was thinking
and
about
then
this.
repacked it all and brought it back. Like, if they were going to close the store, like, they could just close
Sell
it.
everything?
Yeah, or I mean, like, they could just put it in storage in Seacouver. Like, I'm just not sure
honestly,
what's going on
I assumed that's what they did. I assumed that they were moving it out of storage back
from
into-
Seacouver.
Yeah, because
So these are different boxes. I guess I was thinking that scene in the beginning when they're packing up boxes in a weird unnamed place, that was the antiques they were packing up.
I just assumed that was them, like... I agree that it kind of invites you to make that conclusion, but that makes no sense. I think what makes sense... what makes sense is they were just generically packing up to go back to Seacouver because they have personal belongings, and it makes sense to transport them in boxes. And then,
Is that what you do?
Yeah, no. It's, so like a box is like a cube. It's usually made out of cardboard. Sometimes it's made out of plastic. You put your effects in it.
And then you go places?
Sometimes.
Okay.
Or sometimes you leave them. Or sometimes you move them to a storage unit so you can go somewhere without them.
Sorry, this is a sci-fi fantasy show. Sometimes it's hard for me to buy into the reality of the situation.
You ever see that movie Cube?
Oh, shit.
With Jennifer Lopez?
Is she in that?
Wait, is that the Cube?
The Cube is where they're in like a torture sci-fi.
Yeah, it's like it's an
prison.
experiment.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's an absurd movie.
Very good.
Not as absurd as Hypercube, but
I've never seen either, actually.
Cube like upset me. I
Yeah?
got upset because they all like get horribly mutilated.
Ugh.
I saw it when I was a kid, but I was like
That'll do
pretty freaked out by it.
yeah, I don't think I've seen it since I was like 13. I didn't like it either.
Watch Cube, everybody.
Cube rewatched.
So
right.
after this intense karate fight at the antique shop,
Yeah.
Duncan then goes to follow Joe.
Right.
So he follows him to what we find out is the Viva Tower, where Horton lives. So Duncan goes into the cocktail party, and it turns out we'll find out that Horton is Lynn's dad.
Right.
And so if we didn't need evidence for Horton being an asshole, because like obviously in the last episode he killed Darius, he
Right.
tortured Fitz. I don't see any of Lynn's friends here at this party. So like,
Yeah.
what a shitty dad. Like it's just a bunch of old people. Like he
Yeah.
didn't invite any of her friends. Like he's a douche on multiple levels here.
Yep. And he and Joe are talking in the balcony, and Max like looking at all the family pictures and sees Horton.
So then we get a flashback since he sees Horton. And we then get to recount the entire scene from the Hunters episode.
But we get to see Pirate Duncan again.
That's true.
Yeah. Where he cuts a taser wire with his gigantic sword that's
And-
like tucked away.
And we also get to see Duncan yell, Darius!
Yeah.
Again.
Yep.
I laughed out loud when that got like smashed
I
into
did
it. Because it just feels so abrupt. You're like, whoa. no.
Yeah.
Duncan, back in the present, is throwing some serious shade Horton's way. Like, they're shaking hands, and it's, like, tense.
It's so tense. The dialogue is fairly well done.
Sure.
But Duncan's like, oh, actually, my friend was killed. And Horton just says, these things do happen.
Yeah.
It's like, what a horrible thing to say.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
So then Duncan proceeds to attempt to punch
He,
Horton's
like, does a weird,
nose.
like, karate punch, though. It's, like, with his palm or something.
Yeah.
Right in his face.
Horton's nose is definitely smashed to pieces at this point. So they break up the fight, and then his daughter Lynn has, I thought, like a completely level-headed reaction to this. She's like, guys, come on, like, what was that all about?
Yeah.
And it's like, what do you mean, what was that all about? Like, kick this guy out. Like,
He just punched this stranger just punched your dad.
Yeah, it's like he's done. Like, it just goes back to kind of normal after that. I don't know. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's a little bonkers. So this scene made me very optimistic in a certain way, and I wasn't quite rewarded for that optimism. Because one of the problems we had in The Hunters with Horton's character is he's like a little too evil to be sympathetic. He's like too obviously relishing in like torturing Fitz and like commanding his like army of hunter stormtroopers to like be really sympathetic. Despite having what I think is a fairly interesting moral point that like mortals might have an interest in interrupting the game.
Right.
But it's like setting up, he has a family, maybe there's more to this guy.
Yeah, like this is a real opportunity to show, and Joe kind of speaks up on his behalf.
Yeah.
Like a real opportunity to show that this is a real human character who might actually be a pretty good but misguided guy.
Yeah, definitely.
But later in this episode, it just doesn't pan out.
Nope.
As we'll get into soon.
Well, as you just mentioned, so his philosophy, in the next scene, it's later, I guess the party's over, and Robert arrives. He, I guess, didn't attend the party because he was tending to the wounded hunter that Duncan had put in the hospital.
Well, Robert's one of the hunters that attacks Duncan. I don't know if we said that.
Oh, that's right. Yes, that is correct.
And Duncan sees him and lets him go.
Right.
And seeing Robert was the clue that led him to this party.
Right. But also, Duncan letting Robert go, it's what makes Robert like have a change of heart.
Right.
So he approaches Horton and is curious if maybe they're misguided in this attempt. Like maybe they're not all bad. But then we get some interesting stuff from Horton. Horton says like it doesn't matter if they're good or bad. It's about them being like overlords. And we shouldn't have that. Which I think is again a compelling argument.
Yeah, they will fight for the right to rule us.
Right.
Yeah.
And the right to party.
Jesus Christ.
Sorry.
I can't stand it. I know you planned it.
But Horton won't hear any of this. So what does Horton do, Eamon?
Horton somehow tosses Robert off the balcony.
Yeah.
And it's like, Robert turns around.
Well, he manages to do it because he throws a dummy off.
He throws a dummy off. But Horton just leans into the screen, and immediately Robert's body / a dummy just flies off the balcony. And I'm like, he doesn't put up a struggle or anything.
Maybe it was just a one sharp shove from behind.
Yeah. I laughed out loud at this scene. And also, I just wanted to say this. Horton, his acting reminds me of Kevin McDonald from The Kids in the Hall. His mannerisms. I'm going to put a picture up on Facebook.
Definitely. So what have you thought of Horton this season? I know last episode you mentioned that you weren't too sold on him. Do you think
I think he's
any
better.
better?
I think he's better.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the quality of both the writing and the acting is higher in this episode.
I could tolerate him a lot more in this episode.
Interesting.
I
Got that droney touch.
That's right. Yeah. Well, it's just I buy him now. I didn't buy him in that last episode. He didn't seem authoritative to me. It seemed like I don't know. It just,
well, they all just seemed like a team of geeks that had guns.
Yeah. But in this, I buy him a little more.
After this, Richie and Tess are still camped out at the bingo hall.
Right.
And Richie, I guess, has fallen asleep in the car.
Did they sleep there overnight?
Yeah, I think so. And so let's play this little bit of dialogue because Richie gets awakened by Tess, and he recounts a little story from his past spacing.
The Force Awoken.
The Force Awoke.
Stay woke.
I think I dozed off for a minute. What time is it?
Morning. I've been calling all night. Mac hasn't come home.
This has been the crummiest night of my entire life.
The crummiest
Except
night.
maybe the prom with Mary Ellen Nowicki. She got wasted on lemon gin, puked all over the lady's can.
I'm going back to the store.
So, I can't believe either of those two things are the worst nights of your life.
Yeah.
How are either of those two things the worst nights of your life? You live a very dangerous life where your best friend is often involved in killing other hyper dangerous evil people.
And you've been kidnapped several times.
Several times. And like the worst thing in your life is sleeping in the back of a car and your prom date puking. Like, unless when he said like over the lady's can, he meant an individual woman's can.
Yeah. Also, his friend was murdered in one episode.
That's right. He was like
his-
King Kong on Angel Dust in that episode.
That's right.
Whoa.
His
what I'm
other
hearing.
his other friend betrayed him, like to an immortal. Like
A lot of stuff.
yeah,
Richie. Oh, but then I don't have the clip of this. After this, then Tess does get a little gumption.
Yeah.
And she's like, we're going to like find Mac and we're going to take care of this. And she like lays out her plan. And again, there's some weird sexual energy. Like Richie climbs in the front seat and he seems like visibly like aroused about like that Tess is like excited to like, you know, like get into action. He's like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, like we'll do that. Like he's wide eyed and ready to go. Like it's gross.
and he has a boner. Cut that out. Kyle, are you running for Congress?
Fun story, I am actually.
Oh, so are you here? Are you there? Are you everywhere?
Actually, everyone's nowhere.
Oh, okay. Well, where you should be is on iTunes, giving us a 5-star review.
Like, when you unpack that line a little bit, it's actually a little deep. No one's anywhere.
That's true.
Richie the philosopher, the idiot philosopher.
The philosopher. You know, he's really just capturing the fact that we're all sitting on a mote of dust suspended in space, just hurtling around an endless void at like 32,000 miles per hour. So, Richie, just destroying all our illusions, and for that, we thank you.
We thank you. And to give our lives meaning, we can rate podcasts in our free time. So head on over to Apple and rate our podcast with a nice 5-star review.
Yeah, contemplating the void, combat that with a 5-star review.
Yeah.
Who wants to live forever?
Back at Hot Rod's place, and I only say Hot Rod because I keep forgetting my autocorrect on my computer keeps correcting my notes to Hot Rod from Horton, which is amazing. So we're back at Hot Rod's place, and he's comforting his daughter Lynn, and this is crazy to me. Like Lynn is like, "Oh, I can't believe Robert killed himself. I told him yesterday I didn't want to go to lunch with him.
Yeah.
That's why he killed himself." It's like, Lynn, you stuck up. Like, really? Do you think that's like you're that important? He was like, "Oh, like I didn't go to lunch with her. I'm gonna kill myself." Like, what? Are you kidding me?
That's pretty crazy.
Didn't she want to go to lunch with him, but he said he had something important to do?
Oh, and then she yelled, "Oh, I'm not important." Like,
Yeah.
and then he killed himself because
Yeah.
of that. This is crazy.
Yep.
But I don't know. I thought it was funny.
And then it was like, no, he just had something to drink and took a misstep.
Right.
Or something like
Very good
ridiculous.
But Horton gets a phone call from Duncan.
That's right.
I guess Max found out his whereabouts. Well, I guess he knew it and got his number.
Phone number.
So
digits.
Duncan wants to meet him on Wharf 3 that night and kind of end all this. But Lynn has been eavesdropping. Uh-oh. So then we're on Wharf 3, and what happens?
Well, Horton just feels like he's a doctor watching a cancer grow, you know?
Yeah. And he has an axe and a gun.
And Joe is there.
Yeah.
Which to me, I was like, why is Joe there? And why doesn't Horton ask Joe, like, hey, how are you here? Like,
Yeah.
did Horton call him about this for like backup? Like, I don't understand why Joe is there.
Well, I think Mac told him.
I'm assuming
This is like to prove to Joe that Horton's a no good.
Well,
SOB.
what I would have liked to have seen was like Joe hiding out,
Yeah.
and Mac confronting Horton and being like, Horton having to spill the beans about what he's been doing, and then Joe could have emerged and like saved the day.
Do we hear Mac on the phone?
Calling Horton?
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. It's definitely Horton or Mac calling Horton.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's confusing.
It is very weird.
Also, he's going to chop his head off with an axe. Also, they're in like a big room with like full of tools. And Joe sees the axe, and it's like, what the hell is this? I'm like, that axe could be there for any reason. There are tools all over the place.
I disagree. That's like a fireman's axe. That's like for breaking down a door to rescue a person. Like, that does not belong anywhere except a firehouse. I felt like it was out of place. I felt like they chose that specifically because it needed to be something you could call out.
Yeah.
Short of it being a sword.
Sure.
Like, that would have worked too.
I guess so. We do find out, actually, in the script, this was not filmed, that Joe makes mention that he's like, you're ruining your father's life's work and mine. So we find out that this is like a job that's like passed down, I guess. Like Horton's dad is a watcher, or was a watcher, which I thought was an interesting little tidbit that they cut out. Anyway, Duncan confronts Horton, and
there's a sniper that
Duncan like Batman's his way through like these goons, which is pretty good. Duncan decides to let Horton go, and then Horton just instantly shoots Duncan. Like, smart move, Duncan.
I love the scene right before that, like that leads up to this. It's really good because
tell us about it.
They kind of have their confrontation, and they're like Mac gets the drop on Horton. And, like, has Horton's own gun to Horton's face and is, like, gonna make him shoot himself.
Right.
But both Joe and the daughter are there and intercede on Horton's behalf.
Right.
And, like, the daughter is really screaming, trying to save her dad, and, like, Mac lightens up. But just speaking to this kind of dark turn this character took, I was like, ooh, Mac could plug him right now. Like, this could be that and be awesome. But it also gave him a reason to not stain his hands.
Right.
And after that, after being shown mercy,
Yeah.
Horton shoots him in the back as he's walking away.
Right.
Yep.
So as retaliation for this, Duncan stabs Horton in the gut.
Yep.
He's like,
For Darius. And then Lynn's like, why? And it's like, because he just shot him.
Did you miss that?
Yeah.
so Duncan ends up like collapsing and he quote unquote dies.
Right.
So when he wakes up, like everyone is gone. So
Yep.
they just like left him there.
Yeah.
Which I thought was pretty good.
Yeah.
So it's
Thanks,
like, let's
guys.
get out of here. But they also, I guess, take Horton's body.
Right.
So it's like, okay, where are they going with that?
I was a little surprised by the way this played out because I was not expecting Horton to die at this point. Like, you know, they had an excuse to let him live another day, so to speak, but they still had it erupt into this physical confrontation.
Right.
So, you know, that was interesting. We'll see how that plays out.
Definitely.
One side note, is this the first time we've ever seen, like, Duncan have a bloody sword?
Oh, maybe.
Because they have a very clear shot after Duncan stabs him. His sword is covered in blood.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
That might be true. Yeah,
so.
they steer away from that frequently.
Yeah.
I can't recall seeing any blood on this show. Is that wrong?
Not much.
Yeah.
We've seen some blood like on Duncan, I think, but it's not a lot.
Yeah.
Very
Definite
interesting.
bloody sword. Just throwing it out there.
So Duncan visits Joe's office and like clicks around on the computer, and I guess his master hacking skills don't cut it.
Right.
Because all the files are gone, which I guess makes sense because Joe put in a floppy disk before he did it anyway.
Yeah.
Like,
As you do.
but like it also, this scene had like a weird implication, like they've abandoned this place, and it's like it's still, isn't this still Joe's like the store? Like, I don't know exactly what's been abandoned, because also I might be misremembering. I feel like they return to this location eventually in some later episodes, but I could be wrong. And then we cut to the streets, and we've got this amazing Richie dialogue. He's like, wow, secret societies, immortal sword fights. Wow, gee whiz. Like, and there's like people with balloons behind them. Like, it's a super cheery ending.
Yeah.
But then it takes a dark turn.
So a couple walks by holding hands, and then the camera zooms in on their face, and they both turn around to look at Mac, Richie, and Tess, and they look very angry.
And the guy has a watcher symbol on his tattooed on his wrist.
Right. So is this like a watcher couple? Are they both
maybe.
looking at him?
Or maybe it's just him. I don't know.
Because he like stops and his girlfriend's still holding his hand. And I'm like, wouldn't you notice this guy?
I feel like both turned around to look. I could be wrong. I
They
think
could just be responding to each other.
Yeah.
If
Look
you were
over
with
there.
a girl who like you were holding hands with who stopped and like turned to gawk at somebody.
They're like, look at that idiot man-child. They turn around. Richie's going to the circus. Whee!
That's right. I can't
love
believe
Richie.
I'm going to the circus.
Yeah. So that's this episode.
The Watchers. So really good introduction of the Watchers. Really good. I enjoy the introduction of Joe Dawson. He's a big component of the show. Also enjoy the introduction of guitar music that permeates the show, and just is so much of such a higher quality to like the electronic crap and that makes it the rest of the music.
That's right. A lot of filler in this episode. Yeah. Like a lot.
The episodes to come, too,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
Yeah.
It's weird.
I think my guess is it was budgetary problems. Like, they didn't budget properly for all these scenes.
Which is strange because typically when they make shows like usually the earlier episodes have a bigger budget than the end. Like, because like they budget for so much, but then stuff ends up running a little over budget. So the opening episodes tend to have more money behind them.
There's some definite padding.
I think you could cut 20 minutes out of this.
All right, so let's talk about this.
That's aggressive. I don't know about that.
Let's talk about two things. So if we had to Highlander rewrite this episode, what would we change about it?
So Tess and Richie would have to accomplish something.
Absolutely.
Because there's too much of like a buddy cop story between the two of them. Like that moment where they resolve to act, they need to be the ones who figure out where Horton actually is.
I was going to say,
like they feed Duncan that information.
Duncan should be like investigating Joe. They should be investigating Horton. And at the end, the two kind of come together and they all meet. And it's like, oh, this is what the mystery is. Like, it's all connected. That would be good.
So I think that's what the ingredient they could have brought. And Richie and Tess could have actually just made out.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding. No. Cut that out.
Less flashbacks, please.
Yeah. I would have also maybe appreciated like even a little bit more, like we're used to long form storytelling, I think now just generally in our television, like season long arcs about a lot of stuff or a couple episode arcs. Like I guess I could have appreciated this Watcher doling out what the Watchers are over 3 episodes. Like I could see this being like a little mini series thing, like because I think the mystery component to this could be good apart from like a bizarre like zip code. Like if this was an actual mystery to solve, getting into it might be kind of fun.
You know what was another ingredient like that was kind of lacking? Talking about it being a mystery, because Duncan actually doesn't figure it out. It's handed to him.
Yeah, Joe just tells him everything.
Yeah. I would have appreciated if like he knows something's up with Joe. Like he picks up on the fact that Joe's keen to buy this book, that the assistant's reaction to him was weird, and maybe Duncan does a little after hours research and like breaks into Joe's office or something, or maybe he and Richie buddy cop it because Richie's the thief, and then he sees Caleb Cole's axe, or like Duncan is the one who tells the story about that medicine man's stick, like I know what this is, and that's how he like. That's part of the tying the whole thing together.
Totally. Why don't we hear a little bit from David Why don't we hear a little from David Abramowitz and Bill Panzer about this episode?
Hi, I'm David Abramowitz. I was the I guess they called me creative consultant or executive creative consultant. I was a supervising producer in the first year. I was the creative consultant and the executive creative consultant. I got confused myself, but most of the time I was in charge of the writing.
Hi, I'm Bill Panzer. With my partner Peter Davis, I produced the Highlander movies. We got involved in the Highlander TV series. It was probably the best 6 years of my life. So starting the second season was kind of an exciting moment.
It was a mess, actually, if you really want to know the truth.
I know, but look, we had Michael York, who wanted to play Joe Dawson. We had David McCallum, who wanted to play Joe Dawson, who we met with.
Yeah.
But we cast Jim Burns to play Joe Dawson.
He had a certain quality that was just more real, more earthy than the other two.
And he had a decent TV cue from Wise Guy. He was an interesting guy. He'd come from St. Louis. He'd moved to Canada. He had done 2 tours in Vietnam.
No, Jim was great. I mean, I just thought that he brought a lot of depth to the role. He had his own trials to live through in his life, being handicapped, and he was a wonderful actor. But more than an actor, he was a great presence on the screen. Originally conceived, the character was more studious, was a much tighter personality, but which is why we looked at David McCallum and Michael York, but we really made the best choice for the series. He was one of the fan favorites throughout all the years that we did the show.
And we got a chance to introduce the Watchers, a fascinating subculture existing around the immortal world, and the first time that we did something that was an extension of the movies. This was something that was never conceived of in the movies. It was a Highlander television original and became a fascinating subtext for us.
Yeah, as I remember, you and Marla brought that idea to the party, and I just expanded on it a little bit, and I thought it was a great idea, because it enabled us to bring in a human perspective into the show that wasn't there before. So it wasn't just about immortals and their battles, it was about Watchers. And what was most interesting about that was that it gave the audience actually took part. they could identify with the Watchers. They could identify with it's hard to identify with someone who's immortal sometimes and live for 800 or 1,000 or 500 years. But a Watcher was just a normal human being. And so the audience could find themselves saying, I could be that guy. And I think Joe became everyman of the show. He became the audience in a big way.
Grab was the first Watcher that we dealt with who sort of started to step over the line a little bit. That was the separation between the Watchers and the Immortals, and didn't just observe, didn't just record, occasionally chose a side and started to
he had
to help.
He had a definite rooting interest.
He had an agenda, absolutely.
Right, and his agenda was that Duncan MacLeod of the Clan MacLeod should be the one, because he believed that he was not only a great fighter, but had a righteous soul. And he was right.
Fighting Immortals will give you a Mac attack. You ought to know by now.
You ought to know by now.
Welcome to Mac Attack, segment where we discuss what we learned from Mac in this episode.
Mac Daddy.
The Master Macker.
So what did we learn this episode from Mac?
Priceless books are worthless.
That's right. And they're good shields.
I learned that if you let someone go, they will shoot you in the back.
Yeah, never let anyone go is the moral of the story.
And don't run around tight corners, or you're going to get punched in the face.
On the topic of face punching, it's totally kosher to crash someone's party and then punch the host in the face.
That's right.
There are apparently no consequences. No one will call the cops.
Nope.
Even the guy's daughter will be like, hey, what's going on here?
What's up with that?
What's up with that? Lynn Horton.
What's the matter with you? In all this time that you've been with me, haven't you learned anything yet?
Welcome to our newest segment,
What you don't
do. What you don't do. The lessons of Richie Ryan.
So what have we learned from Richie in this episode? So what you don't do is you don't go to prom with Becky and have her drink a bunch of lemon gin and puke all over the can, because that is a bad time. You don't want to have a bad time at prom.
What is lemon gin?
I don't know.
I guess it's just gin infused with lemon.
I don't know. I feel like I've seen a lot of flavored vodka with like whipped cream and Swedish fish and all that garbage, but I've never seen lemon gin. What you don't do is leave your girlfriend alone with Stan Kirsch for too long. Mac. This is really more of a lesson for Mac than for Richie, but Richie's the one teaching it.
What you don't do is go to prom with Richie.
Oh, that's the real lesson. Sick burn.
We should do this more often.
So guys, do you have any final thoughts on this episode?
I dug it. I think it's setting a good tone for this season.
Yeah, this made me really excited to jump back into the show and for the second season. A little disappointed that, at least ostensibly, Horton has been dispatched at this moment.
Right.
Seemed like a little bit of a missed opportunity to me, but I am optimistic for the future, and we've had a lot of new additions to the series that are great.
Yeah.
Yeah. I for the most part enjoyed this episode. Like, I kind of actually thought it was a little disappointing for me personally.
Is it because of the padding?
The padding didn't help, and also like I hadn't seen this.
Bear.
Yeah, I hadn't seen this episode in a while, so I came into it like really like jazzed up.
That explains all the jazz hands you've been doing during this episode.
Constantly. And the tuxedo and tap shoes I'm wearing. But
unfortunately, you can't hear the taps with this carpet. But
yeah. So anyway, I was really excited to see this episode because it was introducing the Watchers. But I guess in my head it was a little different, especially because when you get really into like what the Watchers are in the show, it's like really fleshed out. So it's just an introduction to them. And this episode did have kind of a lot of heavy lifting to do. Like it's trying to introduce this. It's trying to reintroduce a lot of other characters too. So I think it gets the job done. I guess I wish it just maybe explored some of the themes more, or especially had like the mystery element a little more. Because I felt like we were just kind of bouncing around from one thing to another and just being told information. So it was just a little bit of a letdown. I think there was a lot of good stuff though that comes out of this episode. So I'm excited about that. All in all, I'll give it an A. Definitely watch it. It's a good one.
Yeah.
So we obviously had some good thoughts about this episode. Every once in a while, I'll go looking on the internet to find some like reviews of episodes. So I just want to take this opportunity to read a review word for word of this episode. Again, mind you, listeners out there, I am reading this word for word. The opening in the bar, the fight. You know, Mac was just itching to let off steam, and Richie stopping him before Mac really kills? Well, mainly one of the others has given up. Mac, my plane leaves in. Tess, mine too. Love their relationship. Just wishing AV wanted to hadn't wanted to leave the series. Guess she wanted to be home more and do other things. The driving, looking for, finding of Joe Dawson, welcoming JB into Highlander with a relationship of many great times and a few very bad times. Well, on the show on the way. The Richie crashing into the... Excuse me, this is serious. The Richie crashing into car with Bad Watcher with Tess, and do like their dialogue of Richie just saying, we're here, they're there, and Tess, ever think of running for Congress? Tess awake all night on payphone looking for Mac. Richie snoring. Tess has had it. Sorry. The poor daughter, Lynn, to have a dad like Horton. Her fiancé works with him, yet has no prob killing him, thus hurting daughter more. Glad she finds out. The party where Joe finally knows he's working with a bad guy, who is his bro-in-law. Joe trying to save day by meeting Horton. Of course, Matt comes and again shows he more human than Horton. Though does end up running him through with sword after he shot, and Horton coming at him with axe. We left to think he dead, but and all has gone of what Joe shares with Mac.
That one sounds like a beat poem.
I'm sorry. And all has gone of what Joe shares with Mac. And the last with 2 new watchers. Good? We never really know. Do love the last walk with Richie coming up behind Mac and Tess. All 3 smiling. Was a bit slow in parts. Gave 7, as was okay. Might have been 6.5, but they don't have a point part as an option.
What?
Oh my god.
So I think that really gives us, I mean, I know we've spent almost 2 hours talking about this episode. I think that really gives us,
that wraps it up.
That wraps it up.
Yeah.
Say no more. We've been your rewatchers. I'm Kyle.
I'm Keith.
Amen.
Bye.
You don't go to the prom with, what's her name?
Becky Ann Bittaker? Nope.
Let's just go with that. Becky Ann Bittaker.